Cold water hits your face. You pull up your hood, zip your coat, and keep walking. You barely notice the storm around you. Your modern jacket is a miracle of materials engineering. Membrane layers block water droplets, while letting body heat and sweat escape. But strip that coat away. Strip away the synthetic fibers, the rubber seals, and the waterproof coatings. What happens when rain falls on naked skin? Your body loses heat instantly. Water conducts thermal energy away from your body 25 times faster than air. In a cold downpour, your core temperature drops within minutes. Your brain slows down. Your muscles tremble uncontrollably. This is hypothermia, a condition where your body loses heat faster than it can produce it. How did your ancestors survive when the sky opened up? For roughly 300,000 years, rain was a constant threat. It was not just uncomfortable, it was lethal. Rain killed hunters miles from camp. It chilled families huddled under rock overhangs. It turned gentle streams into raging torrents that cut off food supplies. Yet your ancestors did not stay trapped inside dark caves every time dark clouds gathered. They walked through freezing sleet. They tracked herds across muddy plains. They crossed open rivers without freezing to death. How did they shield themselves from a wet world? They became master engineers of natural materials. They studied the forest floor, the hides of wild beasts, and the sticky resin dripping from evergreen trees. They realized that nature had already solved the problem of water. Ducks stayed dry on icy lakes. Pine needles shed heavy mountain rain. Marine mammals swam through freezing oceans without losing body heat. Your ancestors observed these natural shields and learned to copy them. To understand how they did this, you have to look at the chemistry of animal skin. Rawhide is made mostly of collagen, a tough structural protein that holds animal tissues together. When a fresh hide gets wet, those collagen fibers absorb water and swell up. As the skin dries in the sun, the fibers shrink and lock together, turning the hide into a stiff, useless board. If you wear raw hide in a rainstorm, it becomes a heavy, soggy sponge that traps freezing water against your skin. How do you turn a rotting sponge into a waterproof coat? The answer lay in brain tanning and fat saturation. Early humans discovered that smearing animal fats, bone marrow, and cooked brain tissue onto scraped hides altered the hide's internal structure. The natural oils coated the collagen fibers, making them hydrophobic, a scientific term meaning water repelling. Water droplets could no longer penetrate the leather. Instead, they beat it up and rolled off the surface. Paleoanthropologist Dr. Ian Gilligan from the Australian National University has spent decades studying how early humans adapted to extreme weather. His research shows that the invention of complex clothing was driven by thermal survival during wet and glacial periods. Gilligan noted that simple loose capes worked well in dry cold, but wet cold demanded tight-fitting, water-repellent garments. To achieve this, your ancestors invented stone end scrapers to remove flesh, along with bone awls to punch precise holes through tough leather. Later, around 40,000 years ago, they created the eyed bone needle. With fine animal sinew, they sewed overlapping leather seams that stopped water from leaking through the stitching holes. Have you ever wondered what the earliest known rain capes actually looked like? Archaeology gives us a vivid answer high in the European mountains. At the Schneidiock Pass in the Swiss Alps, melting ice fields revealed extraordinary organic artifacts dating back over 5,000 years. Researchers discovered fragments of prehistoric leather leggings and birch bark coverings preserved in the glacier. The birch bark had been carefully cut, folded, and oil-treated to create stiff, water-shedding shoulder capes. Birch bark contains betulin, a natural resin that acts as a waterproof barrier. By heating the bark and layering it like roof shingles, ancient travelers created lightweight rain shields that repelled mountain storms. But tree bark was not the only option. In damp, grassy regions, your ancestors turned to woven plants. Consider the famous discovery made in the Ötztal Alps along the border of Austria and Italy. Archaeologists found the frozen, naturally mummified body of Ötzi, a hunter who lived roughly 5,300 years ago. Ötzi was wearing a sophisticated outdoor survival kit designed for extreme alpine weather. Over his leather tunic, he wore a woven cape made from alpine marsh grass, known scientifically as Molinia caerulea. This grass cape was a masterpiece of prehistoric design. The long blades of grass were woven in a downward overlapping pattern. When rain fell on Ötzi's shoulders, the water ran down the length of the grass blades and dripped harmlessly onto the ground, never reaching his leather clothing underneath. The hollow woven structure created trapped air pockets between the grass layers. These air pockets provided thermal insulation even while the outer grass was soaking wet. Botanists and textile experts who examined Ötzi's gear realized that grass capes were widespread across prehistoric Europe and Asia. They were lightweight, easy to repair, and remarkably durable. If a blade tore, you simply wove in a fresh piece of grass into the mat. When the cape got dirty, you let it dry and brushed off the dried mud. Could a simple cape made of grass really keep a human warm in a freezing storm? Tests conducted by modern experimental archaeologists proved that Ötzi's grass cape reduced wind chill by over 60% while shedding heavy rain easily. It was the Stone Age equivalent of a modern rain poncho. Yet, facing rain on land was only half the battle. What happened when your ancestors had to travel across open water during a storm? Consider the indigenous hunters of the far north. In the Arctic regions, marine mammals provided the ultimate raw materials for rain gear. Fish skin, seal intestines, and whale gut were processed into translucent, completely waterproof parkas. Intestine tissue is naturally waterproof because its biological function is to hold liquids inside the body. By scraping seal intestines clean, drying them into thin ribbons, and sewing them together with waterproof gut thread, Arctic hunters crafted garments that were completely impermeable to ocean spray and driving rain. These gutskin parkas were so light you could fold them into a small pouch, yet so tough they kept kayak paddlers dry in freezing seas. Your ancestors did not just wear rain gear. They treated their gear like survival technology. They applied pine pitch, animal grease, and beeswax to their boots, capes, and shelter seams every single day. They knew that a single leak could mean a cold night, and a cold night could mean death. There was another hidden chemical secret in their rainproofing toolkit: fire. Smoke was not just for warmth or cooking. It was an essential phase in leather processing. When your ancestors suspended oiled hides over smoky hearth fires, something remarkable happened at the molecular level. Greenwood smoke contains natural formaldehyde and phenol compounds. These chemicals bonded permanently with the hide's proteins. This process, known as smoke tanning, prevented the leather from stiffening or rotting after getting soaked. A smoked hide could absorb rainwater, dry out by the fire, and remain soft and flexible for the next journey. Without smoke tanning, every wet garment would turn into stiff armor upon drying. How did they discover such an intricate chemical process without a laboratory? They observed. They experimented over countless generations. They noticed that hides hanging near fire pits survived damp seasons far better than those stored in damp corners. Trial and error became their laboratory. Every refined technique was passed down through stories, gestures, and shared labor. Archaeologist Dr. Francesco De Rico from the University of Bordeaux has examined Paleolithic bone tools across Europe and Africa. His microwear analysis reveals that specific stone blades and polished bone spatulas were used exclusively to scrape organic grease deep into hide fibers. De Rico's research demonstrates that Upper Paleolithic humans possessed a sophisticated understanding of material science. They knew exactly which animal fats yielded the most water-resistant coating, and which wood types produced the best curing smoke. Waterproofing extended beyond what your ancestors wore on their backs. It shaped how they built their temporary homes. When a storm rolled in, you could not always find a dry cave. Caves were rare, dark, and often inhabited by dangerous predators. You had to construct your own dry sanctuary on open ground. At the 380,000-year-old archaeological site of Terra Amata in southern France, researchers excavated the remains of early human huts. Paleoanthropologist Dr. Henry de Lumley analyzed the post holes and stone rings surrounding ancient hearths. The evidence revealed angled wooden poles arranged in teepee-like cones, covered with layers of animal hides and leafy branches. The steep angle was intentional. Water follows gravity. By constructing high-pitched roofs, your ancestors ensured that rain sloughed off the sides before soaking through the hide coverings. In wetter regions, they slathered tree resin mixed with charcoal dust over the seams of bark shelters and wooden canoes. Resin created a solid, glass-like seal that prevented leaks under heavy water pressure. Think of it as the world's first caulking material. Have you ever considered what happened to moisture inside the garment? Waterproofing created a new problem: sweating. If you trap body heat inside a sealed leather coat while hiking up a hill, your sweat condenses on the inside. You get wet from the inside out. Once you stop moving, that trapped moisture chills your skin just as fast as falling rain. Your ancestors solved this with smart ventilation and layering. They wore loose-fitting grass capes over fitted leather tunics. The outer grass shed the heavy rain, while the space between the garments allowed air to circulate. Sweat evaporated into the gap without compromising the outer water barrier. It was the world's first breathable waterproof system. Why was this mastery over rain so critical for the human story? Because rain was the ultimate geographic barrier. Early primates were tropical creatures bound to warm, predictable climates. Cold rain was their boundary. As long as rain meant lethal shivering, your ancestors were trapped in a narrow environmental band. Mastering rain gear broke those invisible chains. Equipped with smoked leather, oiled seams, and woven grass capes, human bands expanded into rainy, temperate forests, misty coastal islands, and storm-swept tundra. They followed mammoth herds through endless glacial drizzles. They paddled bark canoes across ocean channels in heavy fog. Waterproofing transformed Homo sapiens from vulnerable tropical primates into a global species capable of surviving anywhere water fell from the sky. Look down at your sleek modern raincoat once more. You see synthetic nylon, seam-taped zips, and high-tech breathable membranes. It seems entirely divorced from the ancient wilderness. But that coat is not a modern miracle. It is the direct descendant of a grass cape woven on an alpine glacier, a seal gut parka sewn with bone needles, and a deer hide smoked over an open hearth. Your comfort today was bought by thousands of generations who stood in freezing downpours, shivering, observing, and refusing to let the rain win. The next time cold drops hit your face, you pull up your hood and walk onward, wrapped in the quiet triumph of ancestors who learned to stay dry in a drowned world.